Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. If you've joined us before, you know we love turning deep historical research into a clear, visual journey. And today? Well, today we are standing right at the absolute intersection of ancient archaeology and, believe it or not, enduring bedtime stories. We're going to dive in and try to decode a literal artifact that has completely baffled experts for a century, digging up secrets from a civilization that faded away thousands and thousands of years ago. Let's get into it.
So think about this for a second. What could possibly connect a 4,500-year-old carved stone seal found in the ruins of Mohenjo-daro to a bloody, highly magical local village folktale that is still being told today? I mean, it kind of sounds like the plot of a fantasy novel, doesn't it? But today, you and I are going to play the role of archaeological detectives. We are going to look at the evidence piece by piece and attempt to solve a mystery that has literally been buried in the sand. All right, Section 1. A century of mystery, unearthing Mohenjo-daro. To set the scene, our mystery kicks off well over 100 years ago in the dusty plains of Sindh, Pakistan. Back in the winter of 1911, an archaeologist named Dr. Bandarkar visits these massive, weird-looking mounds out in the flatlands. And get this, he totally dismisses them. He figures, they're maybe 200 years old, nothing special. Fast forward a bit to 1919, R.D. Banerji takes a look, but it isn't until December 1922 that the real eureka moment happens. Banerji climbs up this massive 80-foot mound that's topped with a Kushan-era Buddhist stupa. But instead of just stopping there, he decides to dig a little deeper. And his spade hits structures that are 2,500 years older than the stupa itself. Banerji suddenly realizes he hasn't just found an old building. He has stumbled upon Mohenjo-daro, the largest city of the ancient Indus civilization. And deep down within those ruins, mixed in with the everyday trash and treasure of a people from 4,500 years ago, they find this tiny little mystery box of an artifact. It's a small seal carved out of steatite stone. The engraving on it is incredibly specific and just entirely puzzling. It clearly shows exactly 7 women standing in a single row. They're facing a deity who is standing right inside a tree. But wait, look closer. There's also a detached 8th woman positioned totally separate from the group. So what exactly is going on here? Are we looking at a real historical event, a sacred ritual? Let's move to Section 2, Echoes in Oral Folklore, the Power of 7. Okay, to find our answer, we actually need to shift our focus away from the physical dirt of an archaeological dig and look into the ephemeral, but incredibly enduring world of stories. And doing this really brilliantly shows us just how massive the motif of 7 women is across the board. Across vastly different timelines and religious tapestries, this grouping of 7 women echoes so loudly. For example, in Hinduism, we've got the Saptamatrika, the 7 divine mothers found in ancient texts and temple art. In Sufi poetry, the revered saint Shah Abdul Latif wrote all about the 7 queens of noble character. If you look at local Sindhi tradition, there's literally a physical shrine right on the Indus River dedicated to 7 women. And zooming way out to Greek and Vedic myths, we see the Pleiades, the 7 stars represented as 7 sisters, or the wives of 7 sages. It's everywhere. Now stick with me here, because the language part of this is absolutely crucial. The noted historian Asko Parpola actually connected those 7 women on the ancient seal directly to the Pleiades star cluster. Now in Hindi, the word for the Pleiades is Kritika, which roughly translates to cutter, but in the local Sindhi language it's called Katiyun, which takes on a much darker meaning. It means ones who have been cut. Hold on to that thought for a second. It is a massive, massive hint that violence, and specifically cutting, plays a fundamental role in unlocking our 4,500-year-old mystery. Which brings us to Section 3, The Prince and Fairies, the Dream of Gul Andaz. So we're going to turn to a huge collection of oral folktales. These were recorded back in the 1950s by a scholar named Dr. N.A. Baloch, who basically sent volunteers trekking all across Sindh to preserve these fragile, fading village stories. One of these folktales happens to feature a young prince named Gul Andaz. The story goes that his father, the king, has this dazzling, completely impossible dream. He dreams of a magnificent tree, and not just any tree. It has a silver trunk, branches made of solid gold, leaves studded with precious gems, and heavy rubies hanging from its fringes. And surrounding this breathtaking tree are 4 weeping fairies. Prince Gul Andaz is then tasked by his dad to leave the kingdom, track down the meaning of this dream, and somehow recreate it in real life. The prince goes on this absolutely epic odyssey, and eventually he stages a grand viewing for his father. But guys, this isn't some simple David Copperfield magic trick. It's a shocking, bloody ritual. The prince summons the first fairy. As she bows down, he literally violently beheads her. And boom, Suddenly, a silver trunk grows straight out of the ground. He beheads the second fairy, and gold branches sprout. He cuts the head off the third fairy, and gem-studded leaves appear. Finally, he beheads the fourth fairy, and hanging rubies emerge from the branches. At the end, a magical breeze blows through, and the four fairies magically reappear, totally alive, weeping and plucked in rubies, just like the king's original dream. Wild, right? But remember our definition of the Pleiades stars from just a minute ago? The ones who have been cut. 8. Seriously, just let that number sink in for a second on your screen. Because this right here is the ultimate aha moment of our entire explainer.
You see, it's all about the math. During his insanely long journey to find these fairies, Prince Galandas had already married 3 other women. After this whole bloody magic trick situation, he marries the 4 resurrected fairies as well. So 3 previous wives plus 4 fairies equals exactly 7 wives. The prince and his 7 wives settle down in the palace. But wait, the story isn't over. Galandas suddenly remembers a sleeping fairy he had stumbled upon earlier in his travels. He had actually left his ring with her. Well, she eventually wakes up, uses the ring to track him down, and they get married. She is kept entirely detached from that original core group of 7 wives. She officially becomes his 8th queen.
So what's the big takeaway? The absolutely crucial point here is how flawlessly this oral folktale decodes the Mohenjo-daro seal. Think about it. The ancient seal shows 7 women standing in a single row. These perfectly map onto the 7 wives of Gul-Andaz. The seal also shows an 8th woman standing totally detached in a tree. This perfectly matches the sleeping fairy who shows up late and becomes the detached 8th queen. And if you look super closely at the ancient seal, just hovering right above the row of women, archaeologists have pointed out a hazy little image of a human head placed on a stand, which directly ties back to the fairies who were literally beheaded, the Kritika, the ones who were cut. It is mind-blowing. An oral bedtime story passed down by regular, everyday villagers for millennia perfectly maps onto a 4,500-year-old artifact. Let's zoom out for our final part. Section 4, Ancient Dreams, Distant Lands, from the Indus to Mesopotamia. Because it turns out, this incredibly localized mystery actually taps into a massive, global, ancient obsession. The Indus Valley Civilization definitely didn't exist in a bubble. It was deeply, deeply interconnected with other ancient powerhouses of the time. To really grasp this, we have to define a place called Dilmun. In the ancient clay texts of Sumer, which is modern-day Iraq, Dilmun was described as this sort of paradise land located far to the east. The highly respected Assyriologist Samuel Noah Kramer spent his career looking at this, and he firmly identified Dilmun as the Indus region. And this connection gives us a stunning parallel. Look at this comparison. On the one hand, we have our local Sindhi folktale with a magical tree constructed of silver, gold, gems, and heavy rubies. On the other hand, we have the Epic of Gilgamesh, literally the oldest known piece of written literature in the history of the world, coming all the way from Mesopotamia. On tablet 9 of that epic, Gilgamesh travels to a faraway land in the east, Dilmun, aka the Indus region. And what exactly does he find there? A land featuring trees laden with jewels. This specific, vivid imagery of jewel-bearing trees successfully crossed thousands and thousands of miles of ancient trade routes. But here's the thing. It wasn't just physical trade goods like spices or metals crossing those vast distances. It was ideas. In the ancient world, whether you were hanging out in Mesopotamia or farming in the Indus Valley, dreams were not viewed as just, random subconscious static that you try to remember over your morning coffee. Absolutely not. They were treated as sacred mirrors, believed to quite literally show the future. Interpreting a dream was considered a form of higher, sacred knowledge. Gilgamesh's entire epic journey is driven by his deeply troubling dreams, just like Prince Gul-Andaz's epic quest is driven entirely by his father's dazzling dream. Now, we modern folks might sit here and think, oh, well, we've totally moved past that ancient superstition about dreams. But have we really? Get a load of this fact. Looted from the Baghdad Museum and returned to Iraq in 2021, Gilgamesh's dream tablet has been valued at $1.7 million. It records part of a dream that Gilgamesh narrates to his mother. As a modern society, we place immense tangible value on these ancient recorded dreams. We literally lock them in glass cases and insure them for millions of dollars. So, I want to leave you with this final, fascinating thought. If our ancestors, from the artisans meticulously carving a tiny steatite seal in Mohenjo-daro, to the scribes authoring Gilgamesh on clay, all the way to the village bards passing down tales of fairies and princes around a fire, if they valued their dreams enough to etch them into solid stone and whisper them into folklore for 4,500 uninterrupted years, what is the true timeless value of our own dreams today? It's definitely something to chew on the next time you wake up from a dazzling, impossible dream of your own. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the history around you. See you next time.